నాకు సమయం ఎక్కువ లేకపోవడం చేత పూర్తిగా మీ సమావేశంలో పాల్పంచుకోలేకపోతున్నాను. ఈ దేశంలో మార్పు కావాలి అని పోరాడే వాళ్ళకి అతిపెద్ద కొరత సమయం. మిగతావన్నీ మనం భర్తీ చేయొచ్చు, సమయం మన చేతిలో లేదు. కాబట్టి ఎంత ప్రయత్నించినా ఎక్కువసేపు ఉండలేకపోతున్నాను, కాబట్టి మన్నించండి. అందరికీ నమస్కారం. ఈ శుభ సందర్భంలో ఈ స్టేట్ బ్యాంక్ ఈ అవతారం ఎత్తిన తర్వాత 57 సంవత్సరాలు పూర్తయిన సందర్భంలో మీ అందరికీ అభినందనలు. పూర్వాశ్రమంలో నేను కూడా ఒక బ్యాంకర్ని కొంతకాలం. 22 ఏళ్ల క్రితం ఈ రాష్ట్ర సహకార బ్యాంక్కి మేనేజింగ్ డైరెక్టర్గా నేను పనిచేశాను. ఆనాడు 2 బ్యాంకులు ఉండేవి. స్టేట్ కోఆపరేటివ్ బ్యాంక్ ఫర్ ది షార్ట్ టర్మ్ క్రెడిట్ and the Central Agricultural Development Bank for the long-term investment credit. In 1991, I was appointed as the managing director. I knew nothing about banking. I remember I talked to my 2 predecessors. Both of them held constitutional office. One of them is holding a very high constitutional office now. Another is holding another high constitutional office now in the country. I do not want to name them. I went to them and took copious notes from them. My notebooks were full of their remarks and observations and their advice. They gave me very useful tips. They told me about the officials who were serving the bank at that time with whom I had to work. They told me about their strengths and weaknesses. They told me about the politics of the bank. They told me a lot. But they forgot to tell me the 2 most important things about the bank. The recovery rate on that day and the default of that bank to the National Bank, NABARD, on that day. The recovery rate of the bank at that time was 8%. Consequently, the default to the National Bank was the highest in recorded history of this country, for any bank in the country. Both these very worthy predecessors of mine did not mention to me because they were not aware. They did not think it was important for a bank chief executive to know about the 2 most important things about the bank: its recovery and the default levels. I'm mentioning all this to illustrate the complete lack of professionalism in managing our institutions, sometimes even financial institutions. That the bank survived me is a miracle. I remember a very senior official from NABARD came at that time. My senior colleagues and I were sitting with him. I was just about 10-15 days old in the bank. And they were pleading with the NABARD big man, asking for this concession, that concession. Quite understandably, he was condescending and he was telling them why it was not possible, why it was difficult. And on occasion, he was granting certain concessions, etc. After 15 minutes of this charade, I stood up. For those 15-20 minutes, I did not open my mouth. I just kept silent. After 15 minutes, I stood up and said to my colleagues, "Let's go." They both stood up because, after all, I'm their boss. I was their boss. They did not know what to do. And this senior official from NABARD who came was a little perturbed. He said, "Sir, what's the matter?" I said, "Mr. So-and-so, the problem is not with you. The problem is with my bank, with my officials, with our rank and competence, with our non-performance. My coming to you and pleading with you is of no consequence. I must set my house in order. Only then I'll talk to you." He said, "Sir, we have a chairman of the bank. Mr. Nayak was the chairman of NABARD at the time, an official from the IAS. He said, "Sir, he like you is an upright official from the IAS, very uncompromising. Please come and meet him in Bombay." I told him, "Thank you for the invitation, but please tell your chairman that I will not be able to meet him. I will not come to Mumbai because the problem is not in Mumbai. It is in Hyderabad. It is in Andhra Pradesh. I will set my house in order. I will repay the dues. I will improve the recovery. And then I will come with dignity, with my head held high, to Mumbai to talk to your chairman. Until that time, I will not visit NABARD office. I'm happy to say that within 3 months, I joined on the 28th of March, 1991. For the cooperatives, the cooperative year is, as you know, it ends on 30th of June. We take some liberties, we cook some numbers for another 15, 20 days. So we show the recoveries in the month of July also, to be truthful, as recoveries affected in the earlier year. So by end of July, I'm proud to say that the full default was repaid to NABARD, and the recoveries were improved substantially. They were well above 70%, which was reasonably good for that time, because it was after the ARDR scheme, if you remember, the loan waiver scheme of Chowdhury Devi Lal at that time, which we had again in 2009 recently. And then, of course, for the next 2.5 years, whatever I said about cooperative banking in the country was the last word. I do have some experience, but as I said, it was more an accident than design. That the bank survived me and actually thrived was not because the government made a conscious effort to improve the finances of the cooperative sector. The government's only role was to control, to stifle, and to exercise patronage. And that's the reason why, despite the many committees and commissions, including the Vaidyanathan committee recently, despite infusion of a lot of resources into cooperative banking, the health of the cooperative sector continues to be unsatisfactory. That's about my limited banking experience. I left the bank after 2.5 years. After a very happy innings, I learned a great deal. I could do a few useful things, hopefully. But most of all, I learned that we must not allow politics to interfere in banking. All my life, I fought for autonomy of cooperative institutions. And the 1995 law in Andhra Pradesh, the Max Act, which has now become a model for the rest of the country, was in a large measure influenced by my experience, and that became a benchmark for the rest of the country. And subsequently, I do not know if you're aware, the Parliament has enacted recently a constitutional amendment to ensure autonomy to cooperatives, and I was privileged to be able to play a significant role in that because I was a member of the National Advisory Council. The President might have assented to that, I do not know. I know that the Lok Sabha also approved it, earlier Rajya Sabha approved it even before 2009. I'm not familiar with what happened in the past few weeks, but I'm sure it must have been assented to. We have to now make sure that it actually is implemented in spirit and in letter. But I have not come here for that reason. I've come here because it's not common for me to visit banking institutions, despite my sketchy experience in banking. But I thought, given the contemporary situation of this country, I should come and share your joy and maybe share some thoughts. What is really banking about? Why is banking so necessary? In many ways, the moment people started generating surpluses, they started exchanging goods and eventually services. The moment people started exchanging, people started specializing. They discovered that a producer could do better